My little girl kept insulting me, saying I'm a terrible guardian compared to her mom's ex. So I gave her exactly what she wanted, but now she gets no financial support and is begging me to come back. Hey Reddit, I'm a 42-year-old guy, and this is going to be a long story, but I desperately need to get this off my chest. The whole situation is still unfolding and honestly getting crazier by the day. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here we are. I've been raising my daughter Maya, who's now 16, completely by myself since she was just 4 years old. She's a sophomore in high school now, a bright kid who's always been the center of my world. Her mother Jessica, who's 38, literally just vanished from our lives one day back in 2013. It was a random Thursday, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I came home from work expecting our usual dinner and family time routine, but instead, I found a note sitting on the kitchen counter. The note said she needed to follow her heart and had gone back to her high school boyfriend Tyler. Just like that. While I was pulling overtime at a job site trying to provide for our family, she had packed up all her stuff and disappeared. She left me alone with a 4-year-old who kept asking when mommy was coming home. Let me tell you, that was a fun conversation to have with a confused little girl who couldn't understand why her mother had just abandoned us. I work as a plumber for a mid-sized construction company. It's honest work and pays decently. I'm not rich by any means, but we've always been comfortable. After Jessica bailed on us, I made a decision that would define the next 13 years of my life. Everything I had, every dollar I earned, every plan I made was going to revolve around giving Maya the best life possible. And I mean absolutely everything. I'm not going to lie, it's been incredibly tough. My social life basically doesn't exist anymore. I haven't been on a real date in probably 7 years because every spare moment and every spare dollar has gone toward Maya. This kid has been my entire world. Every decision I make, every sacrifice I consider, every plan I have for the future. It all revolves around her success and happiness. She's never wanted for anything in her life. Never had to worry about whether we could afford something she needed. Never had to wonder if she could pursue an opportunity because money was tight. I made sure of that. Even when it meant working double shifts or taking on weekend side jobs, I wanted her to have everything I never had growing up, and I wanted her to never feel the abandonment I felt when my own father took off when I was 11. So 4 weeks ago, I was at home watching TV after a long day at work when there was a knock on my door. I looked through the peephole and almost didn't recognize the woman standing there. It was Jessica. She looked 13 years older with a completely different haircut, but it was definitely her. I opened the door, and she was standing there with this fake smile plastered on her face, like she was just dropping by to borrow a cup of sugar or catch up on neighborhood gossip. There was no apology, no explanation for where she'd been for over a decade, no acknowledgement of the pain she'd caused. Just a casual, "Hi David, I'm ready to be in Maya's life now." Ready? Like she'd been preparing for some big performance audition and had finally gotten her act together enough to grace us with her presence. I stood there in complete shock while she started talking about how she'd grown as a person over the years. She went on about how she'd learned what really matters in life and how she wanted to start seeing Maya regularly. She wanted to build a relationship with her daughter and be the mother she should have been all along. Part of me wanted to slam the door right in her face. This woman had abandoned us when being a parent meant actual work and sacrifice, when it meant staying up all night with a sick child or dealing with tantrums and homework battles. Now she shows up when Maya's practically grown, past all the hard years of sleepless nights and difficult parenting moments. But I also knew what it was like to grow up without a parent. My dad had taken off when I was 11, and I'd always wondered what could have been. Always had that curiosity and regret about the missing relationship. I didn't want Maya to have that same wondering, that same hole in her life where a parent should be. So I told Jessica that if Maya wanted to see her, that would be between the two of them. I wouldn't stop it, but I also wasn't going to make it easy for her. Jessica could earn her way back into our daughter's life if that's what Maya wanted. When I told Maya about her mother's sudden reappearance, she was understandably confused. She barely remembered Jessica since she'd been so young when her mother left. But she was also curious. And honestly, what teenage girl wouldn't want to know her mom? Maya had questions about where she came from, what her mother was like, and why she'd been absent for so long. Jessica started slow with her approach. She asked to meet Maya for coffee, wanting to take her shopping and do all the fun activities without any of the actual responsibility that comes with parenting. But within just 1 week, Jessica's requests started turning into demands. Not polite requests anymore, but actual demands about when she could see Maya, where they would go together, and what time Maya needed to be home afterward. The entitlement was absolutely incredible. Here I was, the guy who'd been doing everything for 13 years. Every school pickup, every doctor's appointment, every late-night homework session, every financial sacrifice. But Jessica rolls back into town, expecting to have an equal say in decisions about Maya's life. I kept my mouth shut about it because Maya seemed genuinely happy. She was excited to have her mom back in her life, talking constantly about mother-daughter bonding time and finally understanding where she came from. I figured maybe this could actually work out. Maybe Jessica had genuinely grown up and was ready to be a real parent. Maybe Maya could have both of us in her life and benefit from having two parents who cared about her. Man, was I completely wrong about that assumption. Last Thursday, Jessica showed up at my door again, but this time she wasn't alone. There was this guy with her, and I immediately knew this had to be Tyler, the high school boyfriend she'd left us for 13 years ago. This dude pulled up in a 2020 Mustang, bright blue with a loud exhaust system, the whole look at me package that screams insecurity and compensation. He appeared to be in his mid-30s, wearing a designer polo shirt that probably cost more than I spend on clothes in 8 months. He had a gold chain around his neck, and the whole flashy appearance you'd expect from someone trying way too hard to impress people. This was the guy Jessica had left us for, and he was exactly what you'd picture. Someone more concerned with image than substance. Tyler got out of the car like he owned the entire neighborhood, adjusting his shirt and walking up to my front door like he'd been personally invited to some important meeting. Jessica was hanging on his arm with this smug look on her face, like she was showing off her prized possession to someone she considered beneath her. When I opened the door, Jessica immediately started talking about how Maya needed to meet Tyler. She explained that they were a package deal now, and that Maya needed to understand her real family situation. Real family. That phrase hit me like a slap in the face. I'd only been the one keeping this kid fed, clothed, educated, and loved for 13 years. But sure, these two were her real family. Tyler stepped forward and tried to shake my hand, but it was one of those aggressive, dominance-establishing handshakes where he squeezed too hard and held on too long. This guy was trying to establish some kind of alpha male hierarchy right off the bat. He looked me up and down, taking in my work clothes and boots, and I could see him making judgments about who he thought I was versus who he thought he was. "So you're the guy who's been watching our girl," he said with this condescending tone. Not taking care of or raising, but watching, like I was some temporary babysitter who'd been filling in until the real parents could show up. Jessica jumped in, explaining that they wanted Maya to start spending weekends at their place. This wasn't a request or a discussion about gradual introduction. This was an announcement about how things were going to be from now on. "She needs to know her family," Jessica said with conviction. "She needs to see what a real relationship looks like." I stood there thinking about what real relationship meant coming from a woman who'd abandoned her child for this guy, and now they were going to show Maya what family meant. But Maya was behind me in the hallway, and I could see the excitement on her face. She wanted to see where her mom lived and understand this part of her life that had been missing for so long. So against my better judgment, I agreed to let her spend weekends with them. What was the worst that could happen, right? That first weekend when I picked Maya up, she wouldn't stop talking about Tyler's place. Apparently, they lived in this fancy apartment complex across town, the kind with a pool, a gym, and a doorman greeting residents. Tyler drove nice cars and wore expensive clothes, taking them out to restaurants that I couldn't afford on my plumber's salary. Jessica had apparently been filling Maya's head with stories about their exciting lifestyle, how they traveled places and went to concerts, living this glamorous life that seemed like something out of a magazine. Meanwhile, I was just the boring plumber dad who made her do homework and chores, who worried about practical things like grades and responsibility. But what really got under my skin was when Maya started repeating things Tyler had been saying about me during their weekend together. She casually mentioned how Tyler explained that plumbers don't really need much education, how trade work is what people do when they can't handle college, and how a real man would have made something more of himself by now. This commentary was coming from a guy who, as I discovered, works part-time at GameStop. After that first weekend, I looked him up on social media because something didn't add up. His LinkedIn profile showed he'd been bouncing between various retail jobs for years and was currently working maybe 20 hours a week in the gaming section at GameStop. But somehow he had pictures of himself in expensive clothes and nice cars all over his social media. Either he had family money backing his lifestyle, or he was living way beyond his means and probably drowning in debt. The second weekend was significantly worse than the first. Maya came back talking about how Jessica and Tyler's relationship was goals, how they understood each other perfectly, supported each other's dreams, and didn't try to control each other like other couples she'd observed. She kept looking directly at me when she said that last part, like I was somehow controlling and unreasonable for having rules and expectations in our household. Then she started making comparisons between our house and their apartment. She went on about how their place had granite countertops and stainless steel appliances, how they had a big screen TV with surround sound, and how everything was modern and nice. Not old and basic like our place, she said. Old and basic, referring to the house that I'd been working to pay for since before she was even born. The house where I'd given her everything she'd ever needed or wanted. By the third weekend, her attitude was getting noticeably worse. She'd come home from their place acting like I was somehow beneath her, rolling her eyes whenever I asked about homework and sighing dramatically when I reminded her about her regular chores. She started making little snide comments about my truck, my work clothes, and my job. Things that had never bothered her before. More concerning was that she started missing her ballet classes. First, it was just one class, then 2 consecutive classes. When I asked her about it, she explained that Jessica thought ballet was kind of juvenile for someone her age, and that maybe she should focus on more mature interests instead. When I pressed her about what these mature interests might be, she just shrugged and said she was still figuring it out. Her grades started slipping too, which was completely out of character for her. This was a kid who'd maintained straight A's since elementary school, who'd been on the honor roll every single semester since middle school. Suddenly she was bringing home B's and C's, not turning in assignments on time, and seeming completely unconcerned about her academic performance. When I tried to talk to her about the declining grades, she became defensive and dismissive. "Not everyone has to be perfect all the time," she said, with an attitude I'd never heard from her before. Maybe I want to enjoy being a teenager instead of stressing about every little grade. This was coming from the same girl who'd been planning to attend the University of Florida since middle school. The girl who used to study for hours every night because she wanted to be the best journalist she could possibly be. The breaking point came last Monday. I got home from work absolutely exhausted after spending the entire day running plumbing for a new office building. It was our usual grocery shopping day. Every Monday for the past few years, we'd go to the store together. This had become one of our traditions where she'd help me plan meals for the week, and we'd talk about what was going on in her life. It was quality time that I'd always treasured. I asked her to grab her shoes so we could head to the store, and she looked at me like I just asked her to clean sewage pipes with her bare hands. "Seriously?" she said with complete disdain. "You can't handle grocery shopping by yourself? Are you really that needy?" Needy. She called me needy for wanting to spend time with my daughter, for trying to maintain the traditions we'd built over years of just the two of us. That's when I knew that Jessica and Tyler had completely poisoned her mind against me. The kid who used to help me cook dinner every single night, who used to tell me about her day while we folded laundry together, who genuinely enjoyed spending time with her old man, was now treating me like some pathetic loser who couldn't function without her constant presence. "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked her, genuinely confused by the sudden hostility. That's when everything absolutely exploded, and I mean everything she'd apparently been thinking for weeks just came pouring out of her mouth like a dam had burst. She started going off about how I didn't understand her the way Jessica and Tyler did. She accused me of always trying to control her life instead of supporting her dreams, of making everything about grades and responsibility instead of letting her be a normal teenager. She claimed that Jessica never tried to micromanage every aspect of her life the way I supposedly did. I stood there listening to this, thinking about the word micromanage. I was the guy who'd been funding every single dream she'd ever had. I was the one who drove her anywhere she wanted to go, bought her anything she needed, and worked overtime shifts so she could have opportunities I never had growing up. But apparently, caring about her future and having expectations was now considered controlling and micromanaging. But then she said the words that I'll never forget as long as I live. She looked me dead in the eye with this smirk on her face and said, "Look, at this point you're basically just my stepdad. Tyler is more of a father figure than you'll ever be. Just her stepdad." After 13 years of being the only parent who showed up for anything and everything. After missing family gatherings, social events, and potential relationships because I was busy being a father. After working myself into the ground to pay for her dreams and ambitions. According to my own daughter, I was just her stepdad, but she wasn't finished destroying me yet. She kept going, saying that Tyler didn't lecture her about college or make her feel guilty for wanting different things in life. He actually supported her dreams instead of pushing his own agenda, she claimed. He treated her like family, not like some project he was trying to perfect for his own satisfaction. Then came the real knife twist that cut deeper than anything else she could have said. She told me that I was just the guy who pays for stuff, and that didn't make me her real dad. She explained that being a father was about understanding and emotional support, not just throwing money at problems and expecting gratitude in return. I felt something break inside me when she said that. Not just anger, but something much deeper and more fundamental. It was like 13 years of my life had just been completely erased. All those nights I'd stayed up when she was sick, all those ballet recitals where I was the only parent, cheering enthusiastically in the audience, all those parent-teacher conferences where I showed up alone while other kids had both parents present, all those sacrifices, all that love, all that time and energy I'd invested. And according to her, I was just the guy who pays for stuff. So I told her, okay, if I'm just her stepdad and Tyler's her real father figure, then she needs to pack her things. She's not staying here anymore. She actually laughed when I said that. She genuinely laughed like I was telling some hilarious joke that only she understood. She said I was being dramatic and that I'd get over it like I always do, like this was just another one of my moods that she had to tolerate until I calmed down. That's when I realized she had absolutely no idea how serious I was about this situation. She thought she could say whatever she wanted to me and there would be no real consequences. She believed she could tear me down, call me just her stepdad, dismiss 13 years of sacrifice and dedication, and I'd just take it like I always had. She assumed I'd put her first no matter how terribly she treated me, because that's exactly what I'd always done in the past. I told her I wasn't joking around or being dramatic. She had exactly 2 hours to pack her belongings and figure out where she was going, because she wouldn't be staying in my house anymore. That's when her whole attitude changed completely. The smirk disappeared from her face and she started backtracking frantically. She began saying she didn't mean it the way it sounded, that she was just frustrated and had said things wrong. She claimed that of course I was her dad, and she was just trying to explain how she felt about the situation with Jessica and Tyler being back in her life. But it was far too late for damage control. You can't call someone just your stepdad and then pretend it was a misunderstanding when there are actual consequences for your words. Instead of genuinely apologizing or showing any real remorse for what she'd said, she got nasty and defensive. She started yelling about how I was being completely ridiculous over one comment, how I was proving her point about being controlling and overly dramatic. She accused me of not being able to handle her having other people in her life, just like Jessica had apparently warned her I would react. She called Jessica while she was packing her belongings, putting the call on speaker so I could hear every word of their conversation. She told Jessica how unreasonable I was being, how I was kicking her out over nothing significant, and how this whole situation proved that Tyler had been right about my character all along. Jessica's voice came through the phone, telling Maya that she could stay with them for as long as she needed to. She said this just showed that Maya belonged with her real family anyway, and that they would take care of her properly, unlike some people who apparently used money to control others. The packing process took about an hour. She gathered up all her designer clothes that I had bought, the laptop that I had purchased for her schoolwork, the phone that I paid for every month, all her jewelry and makeup and accessories. Everything she owned had come from my work, my sacrifice, and my love for her. But apparently none of that mattered because I wasn't her real dad according to her new perspective. When everything was packed, I stacked her suitcases by the front door and waited. I wasn't about to waste gas money driving her to these people who thought so little of me. She could figure out her own transportation to her real family. 15 minutes later, Tyler pulled up right in front of my house like he owned the entire street. He stepped out with all his swagger and gold chains swinging, tossing me a look like he was doing me some massive favor by taking this burden off my hands. He didn't even bother saying hello or acknowledging me as another human being. He just popped his trunk and nodded at Maya, like she was some celebrity he was picking up for a VIP event. Jessica was riding shotgun naturally, wearing that smug grin plastered across her face like she just won front row seats to the drama show of the year. Tyler took his sweet time loading her bags into his car, while Jessica made loud comments about how Maya finally belonged with people who really understood and appreciated her. He even patted Maya's shoulder like he was her knight in shining armor before sliding back into the driver's seat. Before he drove off, Tyler looked me dead in the eye and said they'd take good care of her from now on. I just stood there with no arguments left to make, watching Maya hop into the back seat with her head held high, like she'd just reclaimed her freedom from some oppressive situation. She didn't even glance back at the house where she'd grown up. Didn't look at me one final time. She just stared straight ahead between Jessica and Tyler, like she'd somehow leveled up in life. When they drove off blasting some bass-heavy music, I went back inside my suddenly empty house. The echo hit differently now, and her last words kept bouncing around in my head. Just a stepdad. The guy who pays for stuff. All right then, I thought to myself. Let's see how long her rescue squad can keep the lights on when the guy who pays for stuff stops paying. Good luck, kid. You're going to need it. For 13 years, I had been paying $350 a month for her ballet classes so she could fit in with the other kids and pursue something she was passionate about. I'd covered $16,500 annually for her private school tuition to keep her in that academic and social circle that I thought would benefit her future. I'd gotten her a brand new Honda for her 16th birthday and was still paying $420 a month on that car loan. And over the years, I'd carefully built up $78,000 in a college fund so she could chase her dream of attending the University of Florida for journalism. Every single overtime shift I'd worked, every side gig I'd taken on weekends, every sacrifice I'd made, it had all gone into making sure she never felt like she only had one parent or that she was missing out on opportunities because of our situation. So the very first thing I did after they drove away was call the school and pull every dollar I was putting toward Maya's tuition. If she didn't think I was her real father, then I was completely done paying like one. The school administrators told me they'd need new payment arrangements immediately or she'd be out of classes within days. That wasn't my problem anymore. Next, I canceled her ballet academy membership and told them her new father figure could pick up that bill from now on. They were shocked by the sudden change, especially since we'd been loyal customers for so many years. But that wasn't my issue to worry about anymore either. Last, I called her SAT tutor and ended every single session we had scheduled. I told him to send the final invoice to the people who thought they could handle being her parents now. I was officially done playing ATM for people who didn't want me around and thought I was worthless. While I was making all these calls, my phone kept buzzing constantly with text messages from Jessica. It started Friday afternoon and just didn't stop. "What's wrong with you? You can't just abandon your daughter like this," one message read. "She made one comment and you're destroying her future," said another. Then came, "This is emotional abuse," followed by, "We're going to get lawyers involved if you don't start acting like a father." That last message actually made me laugh out loud. Acting like a father? I'd been acting like a father for 13 solid years while she was off living her best life with Tyler. Now I was acting like exactly what Maya said I was. Just some guy who was temporarily helping out. Saturday morning, I took the Honda to a car dealership for an appraisal. They offered me $19,000 for it, which wasn't bad considering I still owed $7,000 on the loan. I paid off the remaining loan that same day and pocketed the remaining $12,000. If Tyler wanted to play the role of dad, he could figure out how to get her where she needed to go. I was done being her free transportation service. The car situation is where Jessica really lost her mind. She called me screaming about how I was being vindictive and petty, how Maya needed that car for work and school and her social life. She accused me of punishing an innocent kid just for expressing her honest feelings about the situation. I reminded Jessica that Maya had expressed her feelings pretty clearly. I wasn't her real father. Real fathers buy cars for their kids, but I was just some guy, so I sold the car I owned and pocketed the money that was rightfully mine. Jessica threatened to call the police, claiming that what I was doing constituted theft. I calmly explained to her that the car was registered in my name, financed under my credit, and insured under my policy. Legally, it was my property to sell. If Maya wanted a car, her real family could provide one for her. Sunday was when Maya finally called me directly. It was the first time I'd heard from her since Thursday when she'd left with Jessica and Tyler. She was crying, really sobbing. Not the manipulative kind of tears I'd seen before, but more like panic tears from someone who was finally understanding the reality of their situation. She was going on frantically about how St. Mary's had called and said she'd be withdrawn on Tuesday if tuition wasn't paid immediately. Her ballet studio had informed her that all her classes were canceled effective immediately. She had no way to get to her part-time job at the mall without the car I'd sold. "Dad, you're ruining my entire life over one stupid comment," she said through her tears. I corrected her immediately. "It's David now, not Dad." And I explained that I wasn't ruining anything. I was simply not paying for her life anymore. She should ask Tyler to handle these expenses since he was supposedly such a great father figure. You know he can't afford all this stuff, she said, and that's when it really hit me. She knew. She had always known that Jessica and Tyler couldn't actually support the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to. The whole time she was talking about what a great father figure Tyler was and how much better he understood her than I did, she knew he was essentially broke. She'd been planning to keep me as the financial provider while giving Tyler all the credit as the emotional support parent. She wanted the best of both worlds. Tyler's fun, relaxed parenting style plus my bank account funding everything she wanted to do. She thought she could insult me, demote me to just her stepdad, and I'd keep paying for her entire life while she gave someone else the credit for being her real dad. That wasn't going to be my problem anymore. I told her, "You made your choice about who your real family is. Now you need to live with that choice." Sunday morning, both Jessica and Maya showed up at my house looking absolutely desperate. The reality of their situation was finally sinking in, and they both looked like they hadn't slept in days. Jessica had these dark circles under her eyes, and Maya looked like she'd been crying constantly. They wanted to come inside and talk this through, like adults, as Jessica put it. Jessica kept saying how we needed to put Maya's needs first, how personal feelings between adults shouldn't affect a child's future. I told them through the door that there was nothing to discuss. Maya had chosen her real family, and they could handle her needs from now on. I was just the guy who used to pay for stuff, and that arrangement was officially over. Jessica started banging on the door, yelling about how I was destroying a child's life out of pure spite. She accused me of being vindictive and cruel, claiming that no real father would abandon their daughter like this over hurt feelings. That's when Maya really started sobbing desperately. She was pressed against my front door, begging me to just talk to her, to work something out, to not throw away 16 years over one fight. 16 years, not 13 years since Jessica had left us. 16 years. Like Jessica had been there for those first 3 years when she was actually taking care of her child. Even in her desperation, Maya couldn't admit that I was the one who had raised her almost entirely by myself. I didn't open the door. Instead, I called my neighbor Jim, who's a sheriff's deputy, and told him I had people trespassing on my property who wouldn't leave when I asked them to. He came over in his patrol car and explained to Jessica that she needed to leave immediately or she'd be arrested for trespassing. As they walked away from my house, I could hear Maya asking Jessica frantically what they were going to do about school and ballet and all her other expenses. Jessica just kept saying they'd figure it out somehow, that they'd make it work. But I could see it clearly in Jessica's face through my window. She was starting to realize that playing house with Tyler was a lot easier when someone else was paying all the bills. Tuesday came and went exactly like I had expected it would. Maya got officially withdrawn from St. Mary's private school due to non-payment of tuition. Wednesday, she had to enroll at Roosevelt High, which is our local public school. It's not a bad school by any means, but it's definitely a significant step down from the private education she'd been receiving her entire academic career. I know this happened because my buddy works maintenance at Roosevelt, and he texted me Wednesday afternoon saying he'd seen a girl who looked just like me enrolling in classes. He was asking if everything was okay with my family situation. I told him everything was fine. There had just been some changes in living arrangements, nothing more. Thursday, I was at work running plumbing for a new medical office when my phone started absolutely blowing up. Not just text messages this time, but actual phone calls coming in constantly. Jessica called me 13 times between lunch break and quitting time. I didn't answer any of them, but she left voicemails that became progressively more desperate as the day went on. The first few messages were the usual guilt trip material I'd been hearing for days. She talked about how I was being cruel to an innocent child, how Maya was suffering because of my wounded pride, and how I needed to think about Maya's future instead of my hurt feelings. It was the same broken record I'd been listening to since this whole situation started. But the later messages were noticeably different in tone. Jessica's voice was getting more panicked and more aggressive with each call. She started talking about taking legal action against me, about proving that I was an unfit parent, and about how she could force me to pay child support if she absolutely had to. The last voicemail was particularly interesting, though. Jessica sounded like she'd been crying, and her voice was shaky and desperate. She was begging me to just talk to them, saying that Tyler wanted to work something out. She suggested that maybe we could all sit down like adults and figure out a solution that worked for everyone involved. Translation: they were completely broke and getting more desperate by the hour. The next morning, I found out just exactly how desperate they had become. I was getting ready for work and about to leave the house at 6:15 a.m. when I heard car doors slamming in my driveway. I looked out the window and saw the blue Mustang parked directly behind my truck, deliberately blocking me in so I couldn't leave. All three of them got out of the car. Jessica looking like she hadn't slept in days, Maya looking scared and angry at the same time, and Tyler looking like he was ready for some kind of confrontation. This was 6:15 in the morning, and they were showing up at my house uninvited, apparently planning some kind of intervention. I grabbed my coffee and opened the front door before they could start banging on it. I wanted to control the situation from the very beginning and not let them dictate the terms of this encounter. "Y'all need to leave," I told them firmly. "I've got to get to work." Tyler stepped forward, and I could tell immediately that he was trying to intimidate me with his physical presence. This guy probably had about 40 pounds on me and apparently thought his gold chain and tough guy attitude made him some kind of threat. He started talking about how we needed to resolve this situation like adults, how there were mature ways to handle disagreements between people. Here I was, standing on my front porch in my work clothes with my coffee, and this dude who works part-time retail was trying to lecture me about being an adult. This was coming from the same guy who drives a car he probably can't afford, and had just shown up at my house at dawn to create a confrontation. Maya was hanging back by the car, but I noticed she was recording everything on her phone. Smart kid. She probably figured that if things went badly, she'd have evidence of something. Too bad for her, I had my own recording devices that she didn't know about. "There's nothing to resolve," I told them clearly. "Maya made her choice about who her real family is. Y'all can handle her expenses now." That's when Jessica really lost control of herself. She started screaming about how I was abandoning my responsibilities, how a real father wouldn't punish his child like this, and how I was traumatizing Maya for life with my vindictive behavior. Tyler tried to position himself as the reasonable one in this situation. He said he understood that I was hurt, but we were talking about a kid's future here. Maybe we could work out some kind of arrangement where I helped with school costs while he handled the day-to-day parenting responsibilities. He actually had the audacity to suggest this like it was some generous compromise. I almost laughed at his proposal. He wanted me to keep funding everything while he got to be the fun dad who didn't have to worry about bills or real responsibilities? That wasn't happening. "You wanted to be her father figure," I told him. "So figure it out." That's when things went completely sideways. Tyler's face changed dramatically, and he stepped up onto my porch, getting right in my personal space. He started talking about how I was being unreasonable, how this was about more than just money, and how maybe I needed someone to explain reality to me in terms I could understand. I told him to get off my property immediately. Instead of backing down, he shoved me backwards toward my front door, hard enough that I had to catch myself against the door frame to keep from falling. "We're going to settle this right now," he said threateningly. "You're going to start taking care of your responsibilities, or we're going to have a serious problem." Now I was thinking this guy had just committed assault on my own property while making threats. But I also knew that I had security cameras covering my front porch, driveway, and living room. Everything that was happening was being recorded in high definition with audio, so instead of fighting back, I tried to get inside my house where I could call the police. But Tyler followed me, pushing his way through my front door like he owned the place. "We're not done talking," he said. And then he shoved me again, much harder this time. I stumbled backwards into my living room, almost falling over my coffee table. Jessica was right behind him, screaming at me to just agree to keep paying for Maya's expenses. She wasn't trying to stop Tyler from getting physical with me. She was actually encouraging him, telling him that I needed to understand how serious the situation was for all of them. Meanwhile, Maya was standing in my doorway with her phone out, still recording everything. She wasn't telling Tyler to stop what he was doing, wasn't trying to protect me from this guy who was clearly escalating toward violence. She was just documenting whatever was about to happen, probably planning to use it against me somehow. Tyler started pushing me around my own living room, shoving me into furniture and knocking things over. He was yelling about how I was a deadbeat father, how I didn't deserve to have a daughter, and how real men take care of their responsibilities no matter what happens in their personal relationships. I was trying to get to my phone to call 911, but this guy was bigger than me, and he wasn't letting up on his attack. He shoved me so hard that I went down, hitting my shoulder against the sharp corner of my entertainment center. That was definitely going to leave a bruise. Jessica was still screaming at me to just agree to pay for everything, like getting beaten up in my own house was supposed to convince me to hand over money to people who clearly thought I was worthless. But the moment that really got to me, the moment that showed me exactly who these people were, was when Tyler finally backed off. He was breathing hard and standing over me while I was still on the floor. Maya looked right at me and said, "That's what you get for being so dramatic." My own daughter had just watched some guy assault me in my own house, and her response was to tell me that I deserved it. That's when I knew there was absolutely no coming back from this situation. This wasn't about hurt feelings or typical teenage rebellion anymore. This was about revealing who these people really were when they didn't get their way. They left after Tyler threatened to come back and finish this conversation if I didn't start acting like a real father. Jessica was still crying and making demands about money. Maya was still recording everything, probably planning to post it somewhere to make me look bad in front of other people. But here's what they didn't know. I'd had a professional security system installed in my house since last year after some break-ins in our neighborhood. It was a comprehensive system with cloud backup, motion sensors, and multiple camera angles. Everything that had just happened was recorded from several different perspectives in high definition with crystal clear audio. It was time to see how tough Tyler felt when the police got involved in this situation. Saturday morning, I drove straight to the police station with everything saved on a flash drive. The detective took my statement and watched the security footage from multiple angles. His reaction was exactly what you'd expect from someone seeing this kind of situation for the first time. He was genuinely shocked that a daughter would stand there recording while some guy assaulted her father in his own home, then tell him he deserved it. They arrested Tyler at the GameStop where he works, and apparently it made quite a scene. Customers were recording with their phones while he got handcuffed right there in the electronics section in front of everyone. His manager wasn't too happy about that kind of negative publicity for the store. Jessica got charged as an accessory since she had been encouraging Tyler and making demands while he was physically attacking me. They picked her up at an Uber Eats pickup spot Saturday evening while she was working her side gig. The bail hearing was held on Tuesday, and it turns out Tyler had prior assault charges from 4 years ago. So this wasn't his first time beating someone up when he didn't get his way or when situations didn't go according to his plans. The judge set bail at $45,000, which neither of them could afford to pay. Jessica had been calling her sister Gabriella nonstop, trying to get money together for bail, but apparently the family wasn't willing to help them out of this particular situation. Meanwhile, I started getting text messages from Maya that were absolutely unbelievable in their tone and content. She was calling me a snitch for getting Tyler arrested. She said I was ruining their lives over nothing significant, and that I was proving how vindictive and petty I really was as a person. Not one single word of apology from her. Not one acknowledgement that maybe watching your father get assaulted in his own home isn't normal behavior. Just pure anger that there were actual consequences for their actions. Wednesday, I met with my lawyer Robert about updating my will and estate planning. I'd had the same will since Maya was 7 years old, back when I thought she'd grow up to be a decent human being with some sense of right and wrong. Everything in my will was set to go directly to her. The house, my retirement accounts, life insurance payout, and the entire college fund I'd built up over the years. Robert asked if I was absolutely sure about making such drastic changes to my estate planning. He said that sometimes family disputes work themselves out over time, and maybe I should wait before making permanent decisions. I showed him the security footage of my own daughter telling me I deserved to get beaten up by some guy who'd known her for all of 4 weeks. "Jesus Christ," he said after watching the entire video. "That's really your kid saying that?" We spent 3 hours completely rewriting everything in my will. St. Jude's Children's Hospital is now getting the house and half of my retirement money when I die. The other half of my retirement funds is going to establish a scholarship fund for kids whose parents actually died or abandoned them. Real orphans who would appreciate help, not spoiled brats who think they're entitled to everything while treating their parents like garbage. The college fund is getting donated to Roosevelt High School's college preparation program. That $78,000 will help dozens of kids who actually want education and are willing to work for it, instead of one kid who thinks she's too good for public school and doesn't appreciate the sacrifices made for her. My life insurance beneficiary is now my brother Carlos. He's got 4 kids of his own and could definitely use the financial help. At least I know his kids respect him and wouldn't stand there recording while he got beaten up by some stranger. Thursday morning, Maya showed up at my workplace. Security called me up to the front lobby because there was a young woman demanding to see me and causing a scene. She'd apparently taken the bus to get there since she doesn't have a car anymore, and the trip probably took her over an hour with all the transfers. She looked absolutely terrible when I saw her. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes were wrinkled, and she had dark circles under her eyes. Living with Jessica and Tyler apparently wasn't as glamorous as she'd thought it would be. "Dad, please," she said when I came to the lobby. "This has gone way too far. You got Tyler arrested, Jessica can't afford bail, and I'm stuck in that tiny apartment with no car and no way to get around town." I corrected her immediately. I didn't get anyone arrested. Tyler got himself arrested by committing felonies on my property while being recorded by professional security cameras. She started crying again, but these weren't the manipulative tears from before. These were desperate tears from someone whose reality was finally hitting them hard. "I can't live like this," she said. "Their apartment is disgusting. There's no food most of the time. Jessica's crying constantly, and I have to take 4 different buses just to get to school every day. Welcome to the real world, kid. This is what happens when you choose people who can't actually take care of you properly." "I'm sorry I said those things," she continued desperately. "I was angry and confused, and I didn't mean any of it. You know you're my real dad. You've always been my real dad." It was too little, too late. She'd had her chance to apologize before things got physical. Instead, she doubled down and watched me get assaulted while telling me I deserved it. "If I'm your real dad, then why didn't you stop Tyler from attacking me?" I asked her directly. She couldn't answer that question. She just stood there crying while other people in the lobby stared at our family drama playing out in public. "Why did you record it instead of calling for help?" I pressed. Still no answer from her. "Why did you tell me I deserved to get beaten up in my own house?" That's when she finally broke down completely, started sobbing about how she was scared and confused and didn't know what to do. She claimed that Jessica and Tyler had been filling her head with lies about me, and she realized too late that they couldn't actually take care of her. But I was done feeling sorry for her. Some mistakes you can come back from and repair. Watching your father get assaulted and saying he deserved it isn't one of them. "You made your choice," I told her firmly. "Now you need to live with it." I walked away while she was still crying in the lobby. Security escorted her out when she tried to follow me back to the work area. Friday, I got a call from the detective handling the case. Tyler had decided to take a plea deal rather than risk going to trial where the security footage would be shown to a jury. He got sentenced to 20 months in county jail plus 3 years of probation. Jessica received 8 months of probation and community service hours. Neither of them would be bothering me again anytime soon. Saturday, I made the final changes to completely cut ties with the situation. I changed my phone number so they couldn't continue harassing me with calls and texts. I blocked Maya on all social media platforms so she couldn't try to manipulate me through Facebook or Instagram posts. I had my house locks changed just in case Jessica had made copies of keys back when she used to live here 13 years ago. Actions have consequences, and some lessons in life cost a lot of money. Some mistakes cost you everything you thought you had. Maya learned that some words can't be taken back, no matter how much you regret them later. She learned that calling someone just your stepdad and watching them get assaulted while telling them they deserved it has permanent consequences that can't be undone with tears and apologies. Jessica learned that you can't abandon your responsibilities for over a decade and then expect to waltz back in and make demands about how things should work. She learned that playing house with a broke part-time retail worker is a lot harder when there's no one else paying all the bills. Tyler learned that assault charges stay on your record, especially when everything is caught on high-definition security cameras. He learned that trying to intimidate someone in their own home is a felony, not a successful negotiation tactic. As for me, I learned that sometimes the people you sacrifice everything for will turn around and tell you that your love and dedication mean nothing. I learned that 13 years of being the only parent who showed up doesn't guarantee loyalty or respect. I learned that some relationships can't survive certain words, and some bridges can't be rebuilt once they're burned. But I also learned that I don't have to accept being treated like garbage by people who think they're entitled to my money while giving someone else credit for being their real family. I learned that walking away from toxic people, even when they're your own family, is sometimes the only way to maintain your self-respect. Maya is probably learning right now what it's really like to depend on people who can't actually provide for you. She's learning the difference between someone who talks a good game and someone who actually shows up with consistent support year after year. She's learning that taking 4 buses to get to public school isn't as fun as having your own car and private school tuition paid for. Maybe someday she'll understand what she threw away when she chose to call me just her stepdad and stood there recording while I got beaten up. Maybe she'll realize that Tyler's 20-hour-a-week GameStop job and Jessica's Uber Eats side gig can't replace what I was providing for her. But that's not my problem to worry about anymore. I gave her 16 years of everything I had to give. I sacrificed my social life, my dating prospects, my financial security, and my peace of mind to make sure she had every opportunity possible. In return, she told me I was just the guy who pays for stuff, and that watching me get assaulted was what I deserved for being dramatic. Some lessons cost $78,000. Others cost you everything you thought mattered. Maya got her education in the real world, just not the one I'd planned to pay for.